Hello everybody, welcome to Coding 101. So in today's video, we get to explore the two ways of passing a variable onto a function, or the two ways of invoking functions in JavaScript: pass by value and pass by reference. We take a look at these two methods side by side, get to understand them, and try to spell out the difference between each method respectfully. So let's get into it, shall we? But before we do that, please remember to subscribe to this channel. Make sure you like this video, and please make sure you leave a comment in the comment section if there's anything that you would like me to elaborate on. I'd be happy to do so. So let's continue with our video. What we're first going to do is that we are going to try to understand what pass by value is. Pass by value simply means that the actual value of a variable is passed into a function and not the variable itself. In order to understand that, what we're going to do is that we're going to define a variable over here. Let's say var, and we're going to name this variable number, and we're going to assign the value 10 to this number. And then we're just going to create a function. We're going to call it func1. This function is not going to do anything as yet. So let's say we were to call that function. But in order to call it, we need to make sure that this function receives an argument. So if we were to give this function the argument, let's make it a little bit different. If we were to give this function the argument number, so what happens with pass by value is that this variable over here is not the one that is being passed, but a copy of that variable. So a copy of this variable is being passed onto the function and not the variable itself. So let's say, for example, that every variable, this is an actual reality, every variable that we define is allocated a certain memory space, and it has a memory address. Let's say that this variable exists at memory address 001. The variable that is being passed right now, because it's a dummy variable or it's a copy variable, has its own memory. So it is not the actual variable that we defined at the very top. This over here is just a copy of the variable that we have defined at the very top. So you will notice the difference between these two variables is that this one is the real one and this one is just a simple copy. And that's what pass by value means. The actual variable itself is not passed. It is a copy, or it is a dummy variable which is used in the function. So the unique thing about pass by value is that changes that are made to that value or that is being passed will in no way affect the actual variable. So that means that as we pass this variable over here, the copy of the variable that we have defined at the top, this, whatever changes that are made in this function will not affect this variable that we have defined at the top, because remember, the variable that is being used in the function is just a copy and nothing more. So let's just understand that by using a more realistic function, right? We are going to create a function and we're going to call it add1. It receives an argument, and we're going to call that parameter or argument num. So what it does is that it takes in that variable or that argument that we received at the top and reassigns it with num plus 1. And then it just simply returns num. So you can see that in this function over here, we get a variable, or we get an argument, we reassign it, that variable, we make changes to the value or the variable, and after we've made changes to that variable, we return that variable. So if we were to invoke this, you will notice that if we invoke this function over here, number, with the value that or variable that we've defined at the top, let's console log, and you will notice that that variable that we have defined at the top stays consistent and is not changed or manipulated or affected in any way. let's just attach this to a string for easy reference. You will notice over here that even though we took this variable and passed it to this function, this variable, and reassigned essentially the variable that we have given this function, it has been reassigned to a different number. It does not affect the value or the variable that we have defined at the very top. So I'm going to try and explain it again. In pass by value, when we define a variable at the very top, and that variable is passed into a function, what is in fact passed is a copy of that variable and not the variable itself. So knowing all this must make you wonder what pass by reference is. But what I can tell you is that pass by reference is the antithesis of pass by value. While pass by value works in another way, pass by reference works in a different but sort of similar way. So it's like inverted. So pass by reference means that you pass a variable itself. So in pass by value, when we pass a value to a function, we are actually passing a copy of the variable and not the variable itself. Pass by reference, on the other hand, means that you are passing the actual variable itself. So in pass by reference, we're no longer dealing with a copy of a variable, we're dealing with the actual variable itself. So if our function calls a certain value that we defined at the top, like this one over here, we've said that the variable has a certain memory point, but we're going to use a different variable for this. We're just going to declare a variable, and we're going to call it number AR. We're going to create an array of numbers, and we're going to do that. This array is fine, and we're going to define a function over here. And what that function simply does is just it pushes push 4. So we're going to just push 4 to that array that we have over there. So we just take, I don't want the argument name to be the same as the one that we have defined at the top. So we're going to say r.push, and we're going to push the number 4. And then once we're done, we just simply return the array. So now that we have defined this function, what we want to do is that we want to now pass this value that we have defined, or pass this variable that we have defined at the very top to this function over here, and try to see what happens. And I would venture to tell you that in pass by reference, like I told you from the top, whenever we pass a variable to a function, the variable itself is being passed and not some arbitrary value or variable, but the variable itself. So you will notice that if we pass this variable over here, this variable at the top also has its own memory address. We will allocate it to memory address 003. So if it's passed over here, guess which variable is being passed and what's the memory of the variable that is being passed into this function? 003. So not a copy, but the variable itself. So because the variable itself is being passed in this case, so that means whatever changes that are made into the function will affect the same variable that we have defined at the top. So you'll notice now that because we have passed this variable into the function will now change. So it's no longer going to become 1, 2, 3, but instead, let's console log to see what is the new variable. What is the new value of the variable that we have defined at the top? So you will notice that our variable is now different. Our variable has been affected. So that's effectively what pass by reference is. When you pass a variable by reference, you are passing the actual variable itself. So whatever manipulations that you might be doing in the function, you have to be very careful, because those manipulations or those changes will outright affect the functioning of that variable. As we can see over here, we had a different value at the top, and now we have a different value with a 4 inside of that array. So I hope you can understand now what pass by reference and pass by value means. In pass by value, when a variable is being passed, the copy of that variable is being passed to the function. But in pass by reference, the actual variable is being passed to the function. So I want to say one more thing that you probably might have noticed. We've changed this variable to represent an array, but if we were to put a number in here, it would not function the same way. And what makes it different is that in pass by value, only primitives are passed by value, while non-primitives are passed by reference. Primitives are certain data types like string, integer, boolean, etc., while non-primitive data types are data types like objects and arrays. So this is a cardinal rule that all primitives are passed by value, and non-primitives are passed by reference. So that's another way how pass by value and pass by reference is different. Pass by value is only used or done by primitives, while non-primitives are passed by reference. So I hope by now you can understand the difference between pass by value and pass by reference. So the next time when you are invoking, or the next time you're passing your variables to functions, you need to be aware of these two methods so that you avoid potential conflicts within your code. So please make sure you subscribe, make sure you like this video. Again, make sure that you leave a comment in the comment section. I will see you next time on Coding 101.